Hi, I'm Sharon Renfro. Our hearts and minds at SharonRenfro.com believes that we must open our minds before we can open our hearts to one another. A fundamental idea to an alternative way to understand the psychology of relationships. This means that thinking is the key to successful, meaningfully connected relationships. Today's video applies the 3 steps of thinking to the relationship issue of learning to have relationships. Now, I'm going to use examples of the 3 steps of thinking. So I'll talk about the first step, second step, and the third step, and I will give examples of each of those so that you can understand what I'm talking about. Now, the first step of thinking is research. That means that we gather pertinent and objective information. First example, the first day of relationship school is the first day of life. Number 2, a relationship is essential for individual survival. Number 3, the only part of our brain that is readily available to use at birth is the emotional brain, or the lizard brain. Number 4, the first relationship lessons use this emotional brain. The emotional brain assesses for individual safety in the context of the relationship. Number 5, the behavior we have to negotiate our relationship with when we sense a threat to the balance in the need to be an individual and the need to be in a relationship are conflict, fight, distance, flight, pretend, camouflage, and cutoff, play dead. Now, these behaviors can be seen throughout nature and represent the simplest functions of the brain. I'm going to say that again. They represent the simplest functions of the brain. And these behaviors are extremely effective for babies and young children whose brains have not developed the capacity for more complex functions. They're also extremely effective in highly dangerous and simple environments. Number 6, while more complex functions are possible as we mature, for the most part, we don't recognize the need to learn more adaptive strategies to manage relationships. We don't learn to think. At the urging of conventional psychology, we continue to monitor our world with our gut and feelings, which change on a dime, depending on what our gut tells us. We use our gut and feelings to make our relationship decisions. The emotional and feeling brains, ironically, do not ever consider the well-being of our relationship partners. Pretty much we are either selfish or selfless creatures stuck in an instinctual world. The second step of thinking is reason. That means that we use the information that we've gathered to reach a deep understanding through logic and reason. Number 1, the nature of the adult relationship differs dramatically from that of the parent-child relationship. But we don't behave as if it's different. We don't recognize the need to engage empathy to form meaningful connections between one another. Number 2, we do not solve relationship problems or seek solutions. Instead, we move from one problem to the next, totally focused about what is going wrong. Number 3, when learning should have started in earnest to have successful adult relationships, we simply continue to do what we've done since birth. Very maladaptive and totally insufficient for what we say we want. Number 4, we sink into intense feeling states, lamenting the state of our relationship, instead of figuring out what we need to learn to think. We dump the relationship, cloaked in the assumption that the relationship is the problem, or we relegate ourselves to an unfulfilled, miserable life, because we made our bed and now we have to lie in it. Step 3 of thinking is reflection. And that means that we use the understanding to expand our awareness, which allows us to relate to each other with compassion, meaningful connection, and authenticity. We see ourselves as an individual, and we see ourselves as part of a relationship system. Number 1, we accept that learning to have a relationship is a doable process. Number 2, the later one begins the process of learning to think, the more challenging it will be to achieve the pinnacle of thinking. empathy. Number 3, ask yourself questions. How does using my gut leave out consideration of my partner? What observations can I make about my feelings? Do feelings last? Are feelings reliable? What causes my feelings to change? What results when my feelings suddenly change? If I were my relationship partner, how would I experience my behavior toward him or her? Number 4, begin the process of defining yourself so you stand on solid ground. A, what do you value? What's important to you? B, what do you believe? How will your values affect your expectations about your relationships? C, what are my principles? How will I determine my behaviors based on my values and beliefs in relation to the lives of others? D, is my behavior consistent with what I say I value and believe? E, how would someone else describe me? We must open our minds in order to be able to open our hearts. Now, if these ideas have been beneficial to you, like us so that others can find us and get the help that they need. But you can also find more information and in-depth discussion about these ideas at SharonRenfro.com in free podcasts. Our Hearts and Minds, the Psychology of Relationship. Please explore our site. I think you will find it really interesting. I hope you do anyway. And thank you so much for listening.